flesh and one in the machine. So we'll start with commission updates. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or discuss or bring up?
I'll start.
Okay.
Whatever you do, find a way to avoid the flu. It is not a nice friend.
That's the whole thing?
I can't remember it yesterday. Basically, it's been pretty intense.
I'm sorry. Hopefully you get better.
Yes.
Commissioner Hines, anything?
I think the only thing I can update on today is the LD 2158, the legislation. Oh, sorry, LD 2158, the legislation that will allow our budget committee to allow the commission to appoint one new member to our budget committee, and then allow the budget committee to convene and vote in their other few members. Has been signed by the governor. It was an emergency piece of legislation. So once it was signed by the governor, it is immediately law, which is great news. And we can go forward with our budget convening and have a 2026 budget, which I just want to acknowledge also how incredibly stressful it has been for the staff in the county and the towns to be operating with so much uncertainty, and I'm just really happy that we can address that right away and as soon as we can. So that's the good news there.
Other legislative news, there is a bill to fund the county jails that's going through the legislature now. I think it's going to be in front of the finance committees coming up. That would give the jails an extra, all the jails across the counties in the state, an extra $8 million, which would be nice. Almost all of the counties are dipping in reserve funds to make ends meet in the jails because we're trying to keep it from being put on the backs of the taxpayers, but jails are costing more and more. Every county across the state, we're no different than everybody else. And so the extra money would be nice to have. Another bill is related to that is they want to put together a study committee that will, over the next 2 years, study the jails in the counties and see if there's something that the state should be doing. Are we organized correctly? Is there a different way to organize the jails to see if there's a better way to deliver the service? And I think what they want to do is look at jails in county jails across the United States and see if there's any other models that we could be adopting. So I think they're putting together a study committee for that. We don't know exactly where that stands, but we think that'll pass. And then my understanding as far as the deeds goes is the 1% that the state was going to take from the real estate transfer tax has been defeated. But that doesn't mean they're not trying to find something else to take the money. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep fighting that. But other than that, there's nothing else.
Question about the funding for jails. Would that be $500,000 to each county, or is it distributed based on population, or?
There's a formula that they use that has something to do with prisoners and valuation and a whole bunch of other things that they already use. I would imagine that they would just put this on top of what they already have. And so we would get a small portion, but every 100,000 or every 200,000 would help.
Thank you.
And the next is public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the meeting? Please.
Hey, I'm Donald Burnell. I'm chair of the Budget Committee in the town of Washington. Now that the Budget Committee the County Budget Committee has a forum, could you tell me what the next process and how that budget process will work so that the public, both from the municipal side and the public in general, can attend meetings and have some input into the draft county budget that I see is it's been, that's only to be adopted today. Where did that draft budget come from? What's the county budget process going forward?
We're still working through this. Our part, the commission's part, is the budget is brought to us basically by administration. Administration has been working through the needs for the year, and try to keep it down as much as they possibly can. They will bring that to the commission, and we will, we've already looked at it a little bit, we will basically just adopt it at that point, unless there's something that's glaring on it. The next step is the county budget committee has not yet met to have a quorum. We have to appoint somebody to that, and we will do that either in another week or 2 weeks, somewhere in this time period. They have to, because there's a series of members, they all have to get together and meet on their schedule. Once they've got a quorum, they will then appoint the other members to the committee. Once they have that meeting where they have members, then we will sit down with the schedule of going over the budget, because at that point, the budget committee is the one who works on the budget. And the budget committee will develop what they think is the best budget. It may be exactly the same as the budget we give them, or it may have some changes. After probably a series of 4 or maybe 5 meetings with different departments that are all open to the public, they will come up with a budget that will be sent out to the towns, for the towns to have a minimum of 10 days to look at it. And then there'll be a public hearing based on that budget. And then the budget committee will either adopt it or make changes at that point. And then the commission can either just let it go at that point, or if we want to make changes, as long as we vote on it unanimously, we can override something that the budget committee does. And if the budget committee doesn't like it, they can then override what we say. So it is a process. We don't have all the dates at this point. And all of the process, once it's out there, will be, hopefully, all those dates will be on the county's website. So everybody knows and knows what department's being discussed. All of the meetings are public. I think there's a public hearing, as a matter of fact, before they adopt that first budget. So there's gonna be a series of different meetings. We just don't have the dates yet. But those are available, will be available.
So you're looking at probably 30, 60, 90 days out before you finally get a public hearing for the budget itself?
No, I think we will probably have a public hearing right away, within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then there'll be, when we finally finish the process, which will probably be certainly over 30 days, but less than 60. We will have another public hearing on that final budget that the committee has put together.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wishing to address the commission? Seeing this is none, we'll move on to the regular part of the agenda. And the regular part of the agenda includes routine business. The agenda, which is what we have here, I don't know that there's anything we want to add to the agenda, so I think that's okay. Department head reports, thank you all very much for the reports we've gotten. Payroll and expense warrants and reserve withdrawals. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
It's been made and seconded, thank you. Any discussion on any of these? Seeing as there's none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Yep, 3 in favor, none opposed. Now we can get to the discussion item. We'll talk about some of these things. The first one is the adoption of the 2026 draft budget for the budget committee.
Yay. I'm gonna go out of order, because I believe the grant language
You put
next.
this order
Yeah,
together?
I did, I sure did.
So it's okay.
I sure did. I think going to number C, then B, then A, makes
Sure.
more sense, because those all affect the 2026 adoption of that one. So we're gonna start with C, which is the grant language and acceptance of the LEPC and EMPG grants. These are grants through EMA. Based on the approval or disapproval, we'll have a final updated budget for the commission to adopt, to provide to the budget committee. And the director is here if you have any questions. And I think in your packet is all the language from both grants.
How much money are we talking about?
One question I wasn't prepared for, I believe it's 68,000?
The EMPG was 68,885, something like that. The LEPC was two pieces, the 6,000 something for towards wages for one of my employees, and then around 7,000 that goes directly to fire departments to pay for hazmat training.
Now, my understanding is, having read through these, that since these are Department of Homeland Security grants that are doled out to the EMAs across the country, it includes the Maine Emergency Management Agency. They have changed the wording because of court cases. So it no longer obligates the county or the recipient to administer federal law in terms of immigration statutes. And so as long as the court cases hold, then these are perfectly fine. If the court cases get overthrown, then we're back potentially to the original wording.
Except that the state has the right to withdraw. So we wouldn't have to then follow that language.
Right, but it would put us back where we were before, is the money we've spent, we have to return back to the federal government. So it would impact the budget that way too.
Yes.
But in the meantime, we are clear of the onerous requirements that were put in there before. Great, sounds good. Mark?
Do we have any information on the process of the court situation with this bill?
I haven't heard anything else at this point. There's a preliminary, one has a preliminary injunction against it, the other one has a permanent injunction against it. But that means that they're both available for, still working its way through the courts. I have not heard that the federal government has appealed any of them yet.
Okay. So if we okay them, they would go into our budget. But then if for some reason they get turned around and the language comes back, we will certainly have to return the monies. So it's a gamble, I guess. But I believe the state is very strong about making sure that wording that they originally tried does not go through. So I'm in favor of okaying these and they're rolling the dice a bit.
Correct.
If we are in the position to have to return funding and will not be able to use federal funding to cover this money or, these expenses, do we have any funding in reserves that we could tap to cover this if we find ourselves in that position at the very minimum for what we would have already spent?
We always hope, but this is not the year, I think, to take that risk. I will say something, Candace and I chatted about, this is a grant for 2025 through October of 26. So by the time so we're already about 6 months in to it already. And I can't remember which one we shared this with, but by the time any kind of court case goes through and it gets over to, we're looking at a probably the 26-27 cycle is probably when we're gonna have to be a little bit more concerned about that happening, in my opinion.
Yeah, cause that all takes time and we're already well into this grant year to the point where if these are not approved, 26 budget would be short in EMA about $30,000 ish.
And so any court decision, say we are in the 26-27 year before anything theoretically flips back. Will we have to pay back all the way back to 2025 to the federal government?
There's no way to know that for sure. I'm sure that would get haggled out with the various
Yeah.
states that are in the lawsuits.
That was my question, but I didn't know if they had already discussed that.
And is it, so the state divvies up that money, so if this did get overturned, the state would have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
To try and get that, so that's kind of our
Yeah,
carrot that we're hoping is, I mean, it's definitely a small risk, I'll
Yeah.
say.
Okay, I just wanted us to be really clear on, how
Yeah.
far back this goes, if we know, we don't know.
Yeah.
What the general implications are for taking this, I guess.
Director Richards, how important is these grants for budget?
they are incredibly important, the EMPG in particular, because it directly offsets my budget for that budget year up to that amount. It's 50% reimbursement up to that amount, which offsets all of our wages and stuff in EMA. So since this grant should have started back on October 1st of last year, that's why the 25 budget would, when they go to do the audit, we are going to be underfunded for last year significantly. And then this year would also be negatively impacted to the point where we would have to figure out where to make cuts because the majority of my budget is wages and benefits. It's a small department.
Got it, and the alternative would be to increase your budget for the regular budget committee and regular taxes. And for not to do that at this time, of course. So I guess I have to again lean on okaying, accepting the funds. And think that, the right things will be done in the courts, if they even challenge it, which they haven't yet, and move forward.
I'll make one other observation. We are making the assumption that if it came to us with the old wording, that we would vote it down. We have not taken a vote on that. There's no reason to jump the gun and say we would definitely turn it down if it came in with different language. We've never taken a vote on that, and I don't want to make an assumption that that's how we would vote if it came to us. But in
That's
the
true.
meantime, I think I would not be surprised if there are some counties that would take it with that word. Whether the state would accept it or not, I don't know. It might be that the state would just turn it back rather than wait for the towns or the counties to turn it back. But in the meantime, we shouldn't be making the assumption that we will be sending it right back. That's a different calculus to make at that point, if it's worth whatever the new wording would be, that we're still willing to go along with it. In the meantime, that's not what's on the table. What's on the table is the current wording, and with the current wording, I don't see any reason why we would say no.
I don't.
Would you like a motion?
I think we want to put that aside, as part of the regular budget process, rather than do that now, because we'd have to add it to the agenda. And I don't know that we need to add it to the agenda at this point. We'll just assume.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Well, this week.
Don't you have your copy of the agenda? Yeah. So then you wanted to do, B next?
B next, yeah, get all the hard stuff out of the way first. So B is prioritizing the scheduled CPI and step adjustments for the 2026 budget. This, I believe, was an agenda item at the end of last year in maybe November or December's agenda. It's been tabled a few times. We're waiting to get to this point where we know we have a 2026 budget. Again, not a formal vote, but the 2026 increases are included in the budget draft that you were provided. So that is already included. I believe some of the discussion back then was we were kind of waiting to see how 2025 closed out, to see what we have in undesignated and just kind of a net, if you will. We don't have that luxury. 2025 is not closed out. We cannot rely on those numbers, so we kind of have to put a decision on your plate to go off of what is proposed for 2026. Understanding that some of our undesignated aren't exactly where we want them to be.
I think what we want to do is make sure that all of the employees going back to the January 1st of 2026 get what they're entitled to by contracts or by agreements, which includes the CPI as well as any step adjustments. The question is going to be, I guess, this Board of Finance, at what point do we, how do we do it? How do we give it back to them once the budget is approved? Is it gonna be a lump sum? Is it gonna be a figuring that we add to the rest of the year? It would seem that it must be probably has to be a lump sum because we want everything else to not be the basis for where they go the year after this. So,
So I think there's two questions in there. Whenever it is approved to move forward for the 26 increases, then it will be retro back to January 1st to make employees whole. And it will happen as soon as the agreement is made by the commission that we can move forward. I think the question that came up, and when we were talking about moving it forward to March, was at that point to review whether we could move forward now or whether we'd wait until the 26 budget was approved. Preliminary figures are closing on 25. We would have to, you would have to make the decision based on the 26 budget, not relying that there would be undesignated in 25 that could cover those changes. Especially where it's not just salary increases in 26, we have a lot of contract increases that we also need to cover. So the question right now is whether you're agreeable as a commission to move forward with the retros to January 1st now, or whether it's going to pause until we get through the budget cycle.
and your recommendation just based on keeping us solvent would be what?
I think it is based on whether you as a commission feel very strongly to support this as we continue to move forward in 26. And understand there is a budget impact that is presented to the commission, to the budget committee. I am saying that from a undesignated perspective, we should not be looking at that where we're projecting 25 to make that decision.
If I may, so
Correct.
are we then creating an encumbrance that we are forcing on the budget committee if we approve it ahead of the budget process?
Yes. But it's really no different than where we have entered into contracts, whether it be a continuation or whether it be a built-in 5-year that increases every year. That's already built into the 26 that we're presenting to the budget committee.
Yeah,
So
but they don't have to approve it.
it's in the figures that they will be approving when I'm speaking about contracts, or whether even our insurance for the county, that's gone up substantially.
Yeah.
That's part of our numbers that are being presented to them. So salaries are just another layer in that is being presented in the budget.
For our internal policies, I can't quote it exactly, but the commission does need to approve the CPI and step each year. Is kind of how it's written in our personnel policy. And then it does get kind of flushed out with the budget committee.
Okay,
But typically that vote starts with the three of you. It would have been a normal process right last year as part of that.
I'd like to add in regarding this, that my stance has always been the people are the most important thing that we have working for us. And whatever we can do to make their lives a little bit easier, especially as we've made them more difficult. We didn't personally do it, but it's been a more difficult time because of the circumstances. I think we should approve it, but that's where I stand.
I think I'm not disagreeing in terms of our ultimate commitment and our is to the employees, and we know that they're gonna get that. The question is exactly when. Is it gonna happen soon? Which I think puts the whole process in doubt, just in case it doesn't pass. There is, where does the money come from if it isn't already there? If it isn't coming in through tax dollars, is this something that eventually we wind up increasing our tip spending on, not our tip spending, our tax anticipation notes, our TANs, and therefore puts us in a worse position financially for the county. Or if we wait an extra month and we get the budget passed, then it just becomes a natural part of what we're doing. I would prefer the second, just because I don't want to put us in a financial bind down the road. Knowing that everybody's gonna get the money, the problem is, there are people who probably can use the money now. And that's where the problem comes in, is how soon do we get them the money? Which is one of the reasons why I want the budget process to move as fast as it can once we get it going. Now that we've got the approval for the quorum, I want to see this get going. I don't want to see us drag this out any longer than we have to. But I also don't know that I really want to see us commit to spending money that we don't have yet.
Could we potentially kind of meet in the middle with this, that our first budget committee meeting to review budgets, that we discuss that with the budget committee and maybe get a verbal that they're agreeable to move forward at that point, which could allow us to move this forward maybe 4 weeks earlier than waiting till the end.
You're a genius. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, at least that gives us some backing, and we know that that's the direction we're gonna. We don't usually discuss it that way because we discuss it department by department.
Right.
But we are gonna have a beginning meeting where we discuss a little bit about the philosophy of what we're trying to do and how we approve the budget and what we're allowed to cut and what we're not. So it would be appropriate to bring it up then.
And if by some chance the budget committee is not completely agreeable, then we're waiting until the budget goes all the way through, which is maybe another couple of weeks. But if we can get it in the beginning, when we start in April, that would be great.
Sounds good.
great.
You think?
I do. Thank you for that compromise.
Mark, you're happy?
I'm happy.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the next one, which was A, which is the adoption of the budget.
Yes, so based on some conversations today with the grants and the step and COLA, I will provide and produce a final budget summary. That'll go to all of the towns. We will post our budget draft on the website in the next 24 hours. And I will get working on our budget binders for budget committee members and commissioners to pick up. That's their tool to use as we go through this budget process. And then our visual budget will also be coming out sometime next week, which is that interactive tool that anybody can type on. So once these changes are made, that proposed draft will go out definitely by the end of the week, hoping sometime tomorrow, again, to towns, budget committees, will be posted on the website, et cetera, et cetera.
And this is for the towns to understand that this is really just a draft that is not even approved by the budget committee yet.
Yeah.
This is not the budget that they'll be voting. This is the one that we'll be using as a working document for them.
Yeah, but a tool to keep the towns informed of where we are and our progress, just because of the uniqueness. And then the towns, excuse me.
And we won't know what the schedule is till after the budget committee's first meeting.
Most likely, I'm gonna try and keep pulling some strings with them. I have heard a little maybe interest in doing a Tuesday, Thursday schedule. So I'm gonna try and get some more traction. It looks like the first meeting of our joint budget to get everything squared away will be March 31st at 6 p.m. So again, I'll put that out, and then at that time, we'll finalize that process with them, but I'll hopefully get some insight prior, so I can at least give everybody a heads up of when those might be.
It may be a lot, but the other option could be that we just do more at each meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We can't do the twice weekly. I know that's a lot of using your brain and looking at numbers, but
Yeah, it's, I think there's pros and cons to both, right? I mean, packing it in, I think it's spot on the brain, and we're constantly talking about it, questions come up, we wait a week, you kind of lose some of that, but it also gives time to ask questions and follow up, so I think that first meeting will be a good indication, yeah. And then even if they do agree to meet that following Thursday, we'll probably do our admin, IT, finance, probate, and some of the smaller departments to kick it off. We dive into some meatier ones.
Well, the next discussion item we have on here is employee recognition presentation. Any
Chair, I just wanna, sorry, one more question about budget committee. As I reviewed the budget, I did have a few things that came up, and so our opportunity as commissioners to address questions and concerns we have is also during those meetings. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, anytime's.
But I mean,
Yeah.
is the way it will work is we're gonna be having a joint meeting between the
Right.
budget committee and the commission. And so the departments will be here, they will make their presentation, the budget committee will ask them questions. If we don't get our questions answered, then once the budget committee is done with their deliberations, then we will ask questions
Okay.
at that point. And then, we'll have other ideas at that point that we might, sort of as a straw vote, approve our own budget. So we have some idea of what we're gonna come back to.
One of my big concerns is the cost of fuel and heating oil, and just thinking that this budget was put together before the president's war in Iran, which has obviously drastically already increased the prices of fuel and heating oil, and who knows what the future will hold, but that could be a really significant impact for our budget. As we have a lot of facilities to heat and a lot of vehicles to fuel up. So that's just one thing that I want to be thinking about. And I have a couple of other items that can wait, but I think that that's really the big one.
You can certainly bring that up to the administrator privately.
Yeah.
On your own.
Okay.
At some point to get the answers and get that thinking going behind the scenes too. The question on that is, we usually do those as bids for oil company.
Yes.
When do those bids go out and when does the bids that we're working under, or are there caveats in that whole thing that says in case of war, all bets are off?
So this year, we actually went with McCaw to do our bidding for our heating. So maintenance director Jim and I don't know, last week finalized those numbers. And what they do is they work with, I'm assuming they're gonna work with Maritime again because they're one of the best, but cost wise. So they lock in a price and then that's provided to county, a lot of towns, and the Camden Library and a bunch of other people. So there is a hope that we will be able to lock in, especially when the county did it, we were getting kind of less and less and didn't think it as worth it for whatever vendor we were going with. So now McCog has taken it over and they work with all the towns, all the smaller nonprofits, the county,
They work with the schools too.
yes,
Oh, great.
we did previously, so what I did is I just gave the list that we worked with right to Max and McCog and he reached out to everybody, so he's taking that over. So I'm hopeful just with their credibility and all of that, that we will be able to lock something in soon, that should be April, April, May, so we'll know shortly. Not that that helps answer your question, but just so you understand the process.
Yeah, that it was for planning purposes.
Yes.
Talk down, and I guess my concern is still the conversation we had like you guys had last commissioners meeting where most of us are having our warrant articles and ballots printed prior to you really getting into your budget process. I know the preliminary work has been done. And last budget, there was a lot of conversation on the floor about adding this and adding that, and you know, it's where's the cap and where's it coming down for us to be able to know, like, you can't come back to us and say we need another $50,000-$60,000 in August where you were debating last meeting about adding officers or adding this, whatever the topic was. How do you get to the top and then work and have the discussion and bring it down or leave it there? But we're budgeting at the top end versus somewhere we're trying to say, okay, we have to cut something locally to make our assessment contribution to the county, which would be devastating.
I'd make the observation that we're, between us and the, budget committee, the chances of us adding anything to what we get from the administration are gonna be pretty slim to none. That's the point of the budget committee in most cases, is to make sure we don't go over, and I don't think that they will be adding anything. They did a little bit when we had ARPA funding. They would throw things at, they say, oh, look, we've got more money. But we don't have that opportunity and we don't have that luxury now. So I'm pretty sure whatever we get, the administration develops for numbers, is gonna be our top.
Okay.
And it's not gonna go above that. If it does, then, you know, the whole process is skewed. And so I don't think we're gonna do that. And we know, and that's gonna be one of the problems we have that we're gonna discuss with the budget committee, is even if there's a temptation to add, we don't have the money, we won't be able to get the money. We're not gonna be able to squeeze more money out of the towns after the fact. So what we give you, or what the administration sends out in that first draft budget, will be as high as it's gonna go. Does that help answer?
It does, yeah, I would top down.
Because I can't imagine we're gonna go more than that. Yeah, just like, you know, we're sitting here thinking about, how we get enough money to pay our employees what they're due. We're not gonna overspend just to make that happen. We're not gonna overspend to make the budget go up any more than what it already is, because it's already too high. Yeah. Any other questions on the budget while we have Mark?
I'll just add one thing. Been a member of the Camden Budget Committee for a number of years. This is my last year, so finishing that while I take on this new responsibility. And I know the anxiety about the numbers and, you know, having to get it all done. And we need to expedite the county budget as quickly as we can so that all the towns do have the final numbers. And that's our main responsibility right now, I think, just getting it done and getting it to you so we can do it properly. And knowing that in this incredibly difficult year, which is becoming more difficult, we're just gonna have to live with what we come up with. And it's gonna be a tough year, but we have to be prepared for that.
Then we will move on to Dean, which was the employee recognition.
Okay, I'm just putting this in your brains that in April we will have a presentation. We'll recognize employees. Yep. Yes, thank you.
It's your money, it's very interesting.
So yeah, just making you all aware that in April, we will have an employee recognition, presentation. Looks like there's about 6 employees we'll recognize. This is a committee that's been left over for years and years, and a small fun project I hope to tackle in the next year or two, about our employee recognition, but right now what we're doing is providing extra vacation days as a thank you. So we'll go ahead and do that in April. Everybody will be invited, their supervisor, et cetera, so just wanna make sure everyone's prepared for that. And actually you have the list in your points. And if anybody can't make that presentation, if you want to send a note or something that I can read on your behalf, I'd be happy to do that.
So it's good, I think it's appropriate, and we need to put as many of those kinds of things into place on a regular basis. One of the problems we've had over the last few years is we do these things on a inconsistent basis. And it would be good to have some consistency between that and whether it's a 10-year recognition, a 5-year recognition for a job well done. We need to come up with something consistent.
We also only recognize increments of 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20 for the year prior. So these are people that have hit a 5-year incremental anniversary in 2025. So again, the whole thing needs to be revamped. We're well aware that it's just been low-hanging fruit, unfortunately, but we still want to bring them to the commission, present, recognize them. Ready for E?
Yes.
Okay. So public safety coordinator, in the budget, there is a page titled miscellaneous. Those are individuals or nonprofits that we fund. McCog being one of them, we just discussed that. Another one being the Knox County Mutual Aid Association. This year, on top of their request for funds from the county, they also requested a specific position to be funded by the county. The proposal was for a fire commissioner, I believe. So what we did was we worked with the Mutual Aid Association, we worked with the E-Board, we worked with some of the chiefs. We have an internal position. It's titled Public Safety Technology Coordinator. This position is vital in making sure that our dispatch center stays running, all of the towers stay in service and doing what they're doing, technology needs are met, amongst a lot of other things. They also go out into the towns and help them make sure that their radios are hooked up appropriately, helping with new hire training, coordinating training with EMA, helping with things, right, all sorts of things. So all we did was slightly update that job description to be more in line with what the request from the Mutual Aid Association was, which was somebody more focused on kind of fire coordination and training. This is no budgetary impact, this is just kind of a change in essential duties. It's a more town-focused or town-centered position, and we hope to, I think training and resources are the top 2 goals for all of our municipalities. We weren't sure if we were gonna be able to do this, but we were, and we're slowly kind of trickling out some of these requests from the Mutual Aid Association showing up on scenes for structure fires and things like that. So this position is slowly getting ramped up. Trying to think of anything else I can share about this role.
No,
And it's a work in progress, right? So
it sounds like Billy is taking a position that was already in flux from the last few years. The position of, what did you call it? Public Safety Technology Coordinator was a fairly new position to start off with. Only a year or 2 old, and it was evolving as it was. So this is just changing the wording and changing the job description and therefore what the job is, just a little bit. It's another tweak to a job that's evolving.
I think we've done our diligence with the chiefs, with the Mutual Aid Association, with the commission, and letting everybody know that this is coming. What we haven't been able to tackle yet is getting with our town managers and ensuring they're aware of this position, ensuring that they have a voice at the table for needs and can have some sort of easy mechanism to communicate with their chief and just make sure that that's flowing. The position itself will be added to the executive board agenda at their regular meeting, so it will be a topic for discussion. That is a public meeting, so we're just trying to find ways to ensure everybody has an opportunity to provide feedback, especially as we are just now rolling this out in
Will this be funded as part of the communications, et cetera, budget fees? Or is this gonna be funded directly from our regular administration budget?
Currently, it's in the communications budget. It's where it seemed to make the most sense at the time. But I do think, again, after having conversations about what the role should look like, what the town want, what mutual aid wants, what the county needs, I think we'll probably revisit that, see what department makes the most sense, what that structure, chain of command makes yeah.
I mean, the net effect is not that different to the individual towns, whether it comes out of that fee or whether it comes out of directly out of property taxes, but it would make it cleaner and neater. The reason to make it not part of communications is it becomes a wholly run part of the county as opposed to something the board has a say in. Yeah. Mark?
One of the things that, question somebody might ask is, what happens to the work that the person was doing? And one of the things, a lot of the things still fit in the description properly, but one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years, I think the job has been sort of overseeing dispatch as well, and working really closely with the dispatch center. And as we've the dispatch center brought in a new director, that person now has the ability to move into this new circumstance really smoothly, without any interruption in any of the job services being provided previously. So we're not losing anything.
Correct. The only, but that I'll put in that is this is, when we create a job, it's not about a person, it's about the position. And making sure that if we create this position, we will find a person, we just happen to have one on staff who can do this, but that we're creating a job that is not so tailored to one person that somebody else could step in and do it down the road.
I do feel like the changes in the job description reflect that. It seems like to me.
Anything else on this? Do we need to do anything, or you can just go ahead and change that job description without us?
Yeah, typically job descriptions will come in front of the commission if there's a monetary impact. This doesn't have monetary impact. I just wanted to show the changes and what was there before and have you review it.
I just want to say, I think this is a great example of the county doing more work at the municipal level and making our services more available and finding better ways to partner. So I'm really excited about this new position, and I think it will hopefully only enhance our reputation at the municipal level.
I mean, it could lead down the road to us having a fire commissioner in effect. It could grow from this to something else, but I think it's a good step in terms of the services we want to be able to provide to the towns.
And a good, I don't want to use a position or a person as a tool, but it is a tool to evaluate what hasn't been happening in municipalities. It's a way to, create some equity. So not just one department is getting all the resources, we can now resource share, we can all go in and fund something together. So I think it's a positive
Right.
change.
I can add, from the day I was elected to the position, even before I was sworn in, one of my first meetings with the select board chair, the discussion was about how we were sitting in Rockland watching a Rockland fire training and how to coordinate better between fire departments. So the economics of ordering equipment and making sure that the equipment was sparsed out to where it should be and no duplication. It was one of the first concerns that came up, and I've had those conversations many times. This is something that the towns are really looking forward to.
And I'll just add, because I have to keep adding things, is how valuable mutual aid is to Knox County. that everybody's willing to work together to get that, to provide services to all of the towns and share services makes a big difference in terms of firefighting, in terms of emergency response throughout the county. And if this is something that we can help them with, then it's a good thing. Then, our next one in terms of discussion items is F, which is policy updates and policy review committee.
So just some internal things, we are kicking off our department manager monthly meetings again, hoping to squeeze one in March, but looking like April. I've also offered some of the leadership from the courthouse to meet regularly. I think all departments is valuable, but especially when we're in one building together, a lot of similar issues come up. So we're just trying to find mechanisms for people to touch base and be able to bring things to the commission a little bit easier. But on top of that, we are revamping, well, I shouldn't say that, we're updating our personnel policy. We're hoping to get that out shortly. From there, we're going to create a policy review committee, inviting various employees to sit at a table similar to this and just chat through our policies. Every department is so different here. It's really important to have that feedback and ensure that it works for each department, or if we need to have some further discussion. So mostly for employees, but also for you all, that those changes will be coming. And to give you a heads up, we do have a lot of policies that need updating, and those all have to be approved by the commission. So I will find the best way to get them to you, make sure there's background for you to understand why we made the changes, and try to not pack them all in one night. So we'll chat about the best way to get those approvals, but we may see some as soon as the next April commission meeting.
When I was on the school board, we had a policy committee, which, would be hard to do with a commission of 3. We just have to have a second meeting every month. But we did have the policy committee reporting out at every commission or every school board meeting. So, that might just be a good standing agenda item, and, as the committee review committee comes together, if we can just have a goal of working through at least 1 or 2 policies at every commission meeting going forward, that gives us something to work toward. And, if you find that it's helpful to have a commissioner sit in on the review committee meetings, that's also something for us to think about. Maybe it could even be a rotation so that each of us has an opportunity to sit on that committee in the future, just to make sure that we're all staying familiar with the work that's happening, and also playing our role in moving that forward. Yeah, so it doesn't get stagnant.
I'll add something that wasn't on the agenda that's related, I guess. About a month ago, we had an open forum where I sat with with staff and employees, which I think was very helpful to me. And I think once we're done with the budget cycle, we might want to have each one of the commissioners have an open meeting with staff on an afternoon when everybody can attend, get input from them, and give input, so everybody has a chance to meet and exchange some ideas. I think it's a good, yeah.
Absolutely.
It wasn't mine, so I was just told to do it.
As you just spoke about it.
And I know we already talked about the budget process quite a bit. You've mentioned some things, I've mentioned some things, but I think we have most of our ducks in a row. We've got their certificates ready to go. I have people's, oh gosh, can't remember the word off the top, where you need all your signatures, so that's all filled out for them. They do want to. Petitions, thank you. Yes, so all their paperwork is ready, whether they're trying to come on the budget committee, trying to leave the budget committee, trying to do another term on the budget committee, we have it all set up and ready for them. Again, we're constant communication with the budget committee on where we are, so I will work with them this week and try and finalize a timeline. Budget meetings, so that's all I want to say. Those are the discussion items.
Related to that, but not necessarily on this agenda, I just don't wanna lose track of a charter review
Yes.
committee, and I know you're already thinking about that, but we do have a sunset for LD 2158, which is now public law, but I don't know the number. And just wanna make sure that we're staying on top of that, because we need to, we won't be in a position to do what we are doing this year after December 31st, 28.
And I think the timeline in my head, I'm not sure if you and I have discussed this yet, is this year, get a lot of education out about it, right? Where do we leave? What do we need? Get people involved because it does come to a public vote. Next year, have all of our meetings, get done what we need to get done, and then ballot, all that whole process in 28. A lot of the changes we have already gone through and suggested would rely on the 2030 census. So it's nice if we can have it all wrapped up by our deadline for the legislative bill, but as close to 2030, so it's fresh in people's minds.
Yeah.
As putting something on, so we'll have to talk about a timeline a little bit, yeah. But I think I'll add it as it's kind of a every other month check-in, status update, the commission agenda, just so we get great meetings to just stay on text that.
Just to point out that the deadline that we have is sort of an artificial deadline. For 14 years or 15 years, this hasn't been a problem, same charter. It just so happened that it sort of slipped through the cracks when nobody all of a sudden decided they wanted to run for reelection. And nobody knew that they weren't gonna run for reelection. So it may be that if we just pay a bit more attention to it beforehand, that won't happen again, which is what the county administrator is talking about, and being on top of the 4 people whose seats are up for election. But it hasn't been a problem, so it may not be as dire if it sunsets,
It's true,
but
but it doesn't hurt to
yeah,
get
but we want to get it going.
Yeah.
I have a number of people who've reached out to me who would like to be on a charter committee or commission already. Any other discussion items? If there's not, we'll move to the action items. The first action item is an act to approve the North Haven Deputy Services contract for January 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2026. We better hurry up and approve this because it's going to run out soon. Yes,
I'll make a motion.
it's been
I'll
moved
second.
and seconded. Discussion.
Conversation with Chief Deputy Captain from the Sheriff Department and the administrator from North Haven. And it's a great discussion. They're very happy with the services they're getting, and they just wanted to make sure that, this got done. It was a very pleasant conversation.
Kurt, would you like to make a presentation about it?
Well, I was just gonna add that, to echo what Mark said, there is some discussion about potentially having the contract longer in duration. And we can discuss that at a later point, but there's been discussion of maybe a 2-year contract, 3-year contract, so we don't have to keep doing this every year.
Great, I think the only reason we would not do that is if we were worried about budget ramifications down the road. Things are gonna go crazy, but on the other hand, it would also give us some stability in terms of budgets.
And North Haven is also
Yeah.
interested in doing a more longer contract.
Great. For anybody who doesn't know, this is a contract between the county and North Haven, the government of North Haven Island, to provide a sheriff's deputy service to the island. And so what we're doing is basically approving the contract that is very similar to the one we've had in the past. How many years have we been providing that service to a contract?
Easily 20 to 30 years or longer.
So we're not breaking new ground. Great. Any other discussion?
I was just gonna say, I think when we met with Vinyl Haven last year, they had some interesting ideas on how this could work better, monetary discussions, so this is really an extension of last year's contract to allow some time to have those discussions, and especially with other towns interested in sheriff's contracts, we wanna make sure we take a step back and look at what that should look like to make sure it was equitable as possible, while still understanding the islands are unique and they are gonna be different no matter what.
I'll just bring up the one unique thing is statute does say that as a commission, because islands are not contiguous, that there is a tax relief you can give them. That has been something that's been in these contracts for some time. As you get questions from the other communities, that is the difference between the islands and the main communities essentially are expected to pay 100%, whatever that may be based off decisions discussion, but the islands, they do get what's called a tax credit or a tax assessment credit. We just handle a little different in how it's worded in the contract, but essentially it's the same.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion
It's
that
been-
we,
It's already been
act
moved.
that we have to authorize the Knox County Sheriff to sign it. Oh, no, that's the wrong one, sorry.
It's already been moved and
Act to
seconded.
the North Haven Deputy Services contract for January 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2026.
Great. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Mark says yes.
3 in favor, none opposed. The next item we have, and I don't know if this is necessary or not, is an executive session. To convene an executive session pursuant to 1 MRS section 405, 6F, a discussion of information contained in records made, maintained, or received by the sheriff's office that are not accessible to the public by statute. And I will leave this to the commission.
Before we make a decision about that, I just want to take a moment and thank the county administrator, our finance director, all the directors of all our different departments, and all the employees for all the hard work they put in this sort of very unpredictable budget season, and that we're finally coming out of it. And I especially like to thank Commissioner Hein, because she, took the direction of getting the legislation through the legislature. And I'm so thankful for all of the hard work that everybody did.
I'm a cynic. I'm sorry. Have you been watching the Oscars? I mean, all those thank yous. I'd like to thank my director. I'd like to thank, anyhow.
Well, I have my little piece of paper here too, that my tuxedo with.
Yeah, but I do agree. You're absolutely right. Thanks are always due to all of the people who've been putting in so much work for this. Anyhow, let's get back to the executive session. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Do a motion and then discussion before voting?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
And a second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
I wonder if maybe we want to hear from the sheriff first and what the sheriff can share about this MOU. And then decide from there if we actually do need an executive session. Does that seem like an appropriate way of handling this?
Sure, if he's willing to just give us a little bit of background about why we would need an executive session.
Yes.
I was under the impression you folks asked for the executive. I don't want to go over the action item because I provided you with the public facing MOU. But I understood that there was additional questions you may have. That's why you wanted the executive session, because there may be items that are specifically private that we can't share that you may want to know about.
In full transparency, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I asked to have it on the agenda just so it was there in case we needed it. So if we don't need it, I don't think we need to go into executive session, but I would like to hear, you know, just a short presentation from you first on this end review to make that decision.
So, so you have the forward facing one. I brought the Detective Twitchell with me today, so he can speak on some of those things, especially during the executive session. But what this is an agreement with the U.S. Marshal Service to basically broad brush deal with sex offender type of violations that we see both at the state and federal level. There's a task force that's put together. This would be, I think, the 8th annual or 9th annual. It's been a few years anyway. Done this for several years. The important part for us was that this is not tied to DHS, U.S. Marshal Service. There are none of those immigration things that we have talked about in this agreement in particular. That's part of why I shared it with you ahead of time so you folks could see that. It is not part of that. It's literally a few $1,000s to use our staff because there are things that we can't enforce federally, but there's also things they can't do statewide. So they need us and we need them in a way for some of these things to work as a task force in order to fully enforce some of the things that they were looking into.
Yeah, my thought on the executive session, and if it's stuff that the public doesn't know or doesn't need to know, we probably don't need to know it either. I mean, this is about individuals, and it's not about the process, it's about the individuals themselves. And I don't need to know that. So in terms of the executive session, I would vote no. I don't know how anybody else feels.
I will be voting no as well. I just wanted to make sure that we had the discussion and there wasn't something I was missing. It was something for me, and I just wanted to be really clear that I wasn't missing anything. And I think it's a good opportunity to educate the community if they're watching about what this is about and helpful. So thank you.
It also ties to, like we discovered this past year, that all monies in and out have to come before you folks. And it was a little bit of a struggle to find exactly where in the exceptions for executive session this may fit. Because only so much can be forward facing. That's a challenge for law enforcement in particular, similar to the medical records thing with HIPAA. There's certain things we have to protect and we can share them with you in executive session to a point. Some things there that we can't share, but that is the option. But like I said, we've done it for some time. We just didn't necessarily come to you in the past because there was no necessarily internal policy. But like we said, once we had that legal review, even if it's $1 in and out, it still has to come before the courts in some fashion. So we're just making sure that we do that process correct.
We'll talk about the MOU in a minute, but we're still talking about the executive session. Mark? Then let's call the vote. All those in favor of going into executive session? All those opposed? No. 3 no's. So now we have on the floor, the next is the action item, which is an act to authorize the Knox County Sheriff to sign an MOU with the U.S. Marshals.
So moved, Mark.
And second, I didn't hear, couldn't hear it.
So it's been moved and seconded, discussion. So now, if you would, I think we've discussed parts of this before, that there are people out there we don't want on their streets. And the best way for you guys to deal with them, if it's on a federal basis, is through the Marshal Service. And I'm assuming this is part of that.
In a sense, may I?
Please,
Okay. So in,
would you like to introduce yourself?
that's the Twitchell Detective with the Sheriff's Office. I've been there for 28 years. The last 21 of those 28, I do all of the Sheriff's Office such assault cases. So this is something I'm very familiar with and deal with on a daily basis. In 1991, the state of Maine started a sex offender registry. That registry was revamped in 95, again in 1999, and then again in 2013. Each one of those revamp of the sex offender registry in the state of Maine brought with it new regulations that sex offenders need to adhere to. And as you can imagine, not all people adhere to the rules that they're supposed to. What's unique about it is that every time there is a revamp, there's a period of time, let's just say between 1999 and 2013, that the people in that time frame was grandfathered under those rules, and then when it changed again, so the rules are different for everybody, so to speak. So it is a little bit complex. Another thing that makes Knox County a little unique is that we hold in our county the Maine State Prison. So our numbers of sex offenders are higher than most. They still need to be maintained and documented, their movements tracked, and of course, when they get released, that's a whole nother situation as well. In Knox County, currently, there are 170 registered sex offenders. 27 of those are housed in the Maine State Prison, which means we have approximately 146 registered sex offenders in Knox County out and about that need to be monitored and to ensure that they are in compliance with the standards of the Maine Sex Offender Registry. As you can imagine, trying to keep track of 140 people to do everything that they're supposed to do in the time frames of whatever SORNA that they were charged under can be a daunting task. What the Marshal Service does is provides us with funding to be able to allow a small group of us to be able to have the time to ensure that these people are compliant. And if they are not, they're dealt with accordingly. Questions?
Is this MOU that was signed purely for sex registry administration?
Yes, so when this first started back in with us, 2018, yes, somewhere right in there, 2019. It started, it would be a 2-day operation. There would be members of the Marshal Service that come up here, we plan and coordinate, we'd section off the county, we would team up, and we would try to hit everybody in 2 days. A 2-day fail swoop, day, night, try to get everybody done. After a year or two of doing that, they realized that we had a pretty good handle on how we handle things here. That we knew what we were doing, we didn't need to be babysat. In the last 5 to 6 years at least, they've simply just funded us and allow us to do our own operation, so to speak. So our primary concern and what we do with that funding is simply to ensure that sex offenders are compliant and nothing more.
How many staff are working on that?
Typically, because it's kind of complex in nature, typically there's only 2 of us that do these details.
Do you still do it as a batch like that within a day or two, or do you do it over the course of the whole year now?
So these MOUs have a time frame. Usually they're about 30 days, 30 to 45 days. Yes, in here, somewhere in that time frame. Trying to locate people where they're supposed to be can be difficult during the week, so it's typically nights and weekends. So in that time frame, we will try to utilize as many nights and weekends that we can, locate as many people as we can. In the time frame allotted in the MOU.
Other questions?
One more question, and just thinking about, like succession, you've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, so I'm guessing there may be a point when you want to retire.
Several years ago.
Yeah. And you have one other person who's been working on this with you. I don't know who that person is, if it's always the same person, but just wondering how this skill set is being shared with other folks in the department. So if there is turnover in the future, because it sounds like you maybe have it down to a science, and others may not. And that's more for the sheriff, I think, probably than for you.
So that was the original intent of it. A lot of deputies were brought on at the same times, bringing in off-duty deputies and detectives. Now, because it is more spread out, we tend to use just who's available that understands, but to your point, it may be important for us to look at that for these future ones to start bringing those in. Typically, what we've seen though is the investigators will decide which purview they want to be in, but the sheriff will ultimately say, well, you're the better one at this choice, because we do have several detectives, they all take on all of the functions, but they each have some specialties. In preparation for that, we're looking at who do we bring on as that some of the staff have been working with Detective Twitchell throughout the last few years, kind of gleaning knowledge from him as it were anyways.
Does sound like we're running a fairly good program. If the Marshal Service has handed it over and said, you guys can do it. So thank you, that you're doing a great job doing it. Because if we weren't, I'm sure the Marshal Service would still be involved. On the other hand, they're probably willing to let it go. But it is a testament, once again, to how well our sheriff's department's running. Thank you. Mark, anything?
No, I'm just in awe that, people do this kind of work on a constant, regular, year after year basis, and thankful for that.
No other discussion? All those in favor of the MOU?
Mark says yes.
3 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Other items, there's nothing else on the agenda. Anything else we need to discuss? We need to discuss our next meeting, which may be
March 31st.
March 31st,
It's a
6
Tuesday.
p.m. It's a Tuesday. Yeah. Which is gonna be the one,
And that's a joint budget committee?
Correct,
yeah,
yes.
that's gonna be the purpose of the meeting is the budget.
March 31st.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Yes.
Yeah.
6.
16, okay, thank you.
If there's nothing further, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Moved and seconded. And then once we meet on the 31st, then we'll have some idea what all of our other meetings will be.
Yeah, I'm hoping for, but definitely we'll finalize that.
And those will probably be evening meetings or late afternoon meetings.
Tuesday, Thursday.
And we'll still have our regular meeting in April, whatever date that is, yes. Great. Nothing further. All those in favor of adjournment?
Say yes.
3 in favor, none opposed. Thank you.